Hi, Dave Anderson from the Camera Company. Today I want to talk about Lightroom's Radial Filter. I use the Radial Filter to, in essence, put a spotlight on the subject in my photograph. For example, I have a picture of a bee here on a flower, and there's some background, and it's kind of nice, but it's a little flat. There doesn't seem to be a focal point, and we need something to draw the eye to our subject, which in this case is the bee. I'm going to show you how to use the Radial Filter that Lightroom has. The Radial Filter is in the upper right-hand corner of the Develop module. It's in the same line as your Crop and Straighten, your Heal and Clone tool, Red Eye, your Graduated Filter, as well as the Adjustment Brush. The Radial Filter is the second from the right. If we click on that, we get a control panel here, which allows us to make all these different adjustments from color temperature, exposure, contrast. We can adjust just to highlight the shadows, our white point, our black point. We can add or remove clarity, saturation, sharpness. We can add noise, moire and fringe, as well as we can adjust how feathered our edge is. So to start off, what we're going to do is we are going to click and drag a circle around our bee. Now we can make that circle into an oval by just grabbing one of the control handles and moving it in and out. So I've made it kind of an oval. But I want to also adjust that oval. So between control points, if you grab it, you can then adjust the angle of your oval. And what I want to do is center that over our bee, because that's where I want my spotlight, if you will, to shine on this image. So what I've done is I've created that. Now let me show you by adjusting the exposure. I'm going to take the exposure way down, and I'm going to come down here and I'm going to grab my feather tool. I can make that a very hard edge, or I can make it a very soft edge. I'm going to go about 3/4 of the way in there, about 70%, because I want to have a little bit of fall off, and I want to make that just a little bit bigger. So we can grab those and move that a little bit bigger. So if we just said, okay, that looks good there, let me get off of that. We could stop right there, and we've just put the spotlight on our bumblebee. But I want to do a little bit more. What I want to do is I don't want the background to be quite that dark, so I'm going to lighten it back up a little bit. I'm going to come in here and I am going to take my saturation slider and move that a little bit to the left to take saturation out. You see I can take it all out and make it a total black and white background, but I don't want to do that. I still want some color there, so I'm going to take about half of the saturation out of it. I also want to try to mute this background a little bit more, so I'm going to take my clarity slider. If I go to the right, you can see I sharpen everything up. If I come to the left, it actually kind of starts to blur things out. So I'm going to go about 3/4 of the way to the left and blur that background a little bit. I'm also going to come down to my sharpening tool and move that to the left to take a little bit of the sharpness out of that background. So now what I've done is I've put a spotlight on this bee, taken my background and muted it a little bit, pushed it into the background, so that when I'm all done, and I just click done here, what I have is I have an image, and if we compare it to our first image, you can see what I've done is I've put a spotlight on this bee in order to call it out and make a photo a little bit more interesting. This tool is great to use when you're doing portraits so that you can highlight a person's face. For example, here, let's pull up our good friend Adam. And I'm going to come over here and grab the Radial Filter and put a oval around Adam's face. Let's adjust it a little bit so that it goes over his face properly. And now what we can do is we can take the exposure tool and darken our background a little bit, brightening his face up. We probably need to open up our feathering a little bit to keep his face in there. We could also then come into the background, if you will, and play games like we'll darken our shadows, our highlights, and all of our shadows, so now he jumps out a little bit more. Maybe we did a little bit too much on the exposure. But again, we can take an image that normally is flat and put a spotlight on our subject. So I challenge you to try the Radial Filter on your images. It's simple to use, and again, as with anything in Lightroom, if you don't like what you see, you can either just double click on the particular line and that'll reset it back to 0, or you can come in and reset the whole image. I hope this tip was helpful. If so, please follow us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll look forward to seeing you in our next video.